Hey, welcome back to the channel. And in this video, we're going to start taking a look at the 89 Ninja ZX7. Let's see what we have. So like I said, this is the first video of many, I think. I put it this way, first of many, I hope, is because I'm hoping that I can get this thing running. Because if it runs and it doesn't make bad noises, then it will get a full restoration. And the first order of business is going to be to see if I can get to turn over. So the basic steps are just going to be, just going to take the body work off it, take the tank off and whatnot, just so I can get access to everything. And then we'll put a battery or a jump pack or whatever on it and see if we can get it to, first of all, will it turn over? Second of all, if I can get it to turn over, do I have some spark? And then thirdly, can I get it some fuel to it? Maybe I'll just do a quick squirt down the carbs to see if it fires, and if it does, as long as there's no crap under there, you know, mice and whatnot, we'll pull the carbs off and give them a good going through. The guy that I bought this one from, he said it was supposed to run, although he never had it running. So he said he did try to start it once. He put a good battery on it, but he said it wouldn't even turn over. He was getting no crank when he pushed the button. If we can't get it to crank at the button, maybe it needs maybe some cleaning required in here. Maybe we can jump the starter. So what I've started to do is I try to do this a number of weeks in advance of really starting the tear down. I like to soak all of the fasteners in penetrating oil. So I usually start with WD-40. I'll do that for a couple of weeks, and then I'll use Seafoam Deep Creep and Liquid Wrench and PB Blaster, and I'll throw anything and everything at it that I have. I just keep soaking all the fasteners, and that way I just find it does help. You end up breaking fewer bolts, and it just makes the whole disassembly process a whole lot simpler. So from what I know, this has been sitting for a long time since it ran. 10 years, 15 years, a long time. So one of the things I have to expect here is that if I can get it to fire up, it's probably going to smoke. It's not uncommon for piston rings to stick on bikes that have been sitting for a long time. But oftentimes, if you run it and you keep running it, those rings will loosen back up again and the smoke will disappear. I mean, there's a lot of awful stuff on this bike, aside from the color and the polished frame and the polished swing arm and the polished wheels and the polished forks. Somebody went crazy with the polish. But I mean, this is just truly awful. Oxford heated grips, some sort of these are not the original infill panels here, and they've got the Oxford heated grip switch on here. There's wiring kind of hanging out everywhere. It's yeah, it's not pretty. It is not pretty. It's not the worst condition bike I've ever done. I'm led to believe that parts for the ZX7s, the 89s and the 90s, are very hard to come by, especially things like bearings and I don't know about piston rings and that kind of stuff, but certainly you know, rod bearings, crank bearings, that kind of stuff. They're almost unobtainium today. So a few small things that I noticed. This rubber bumper is back to front. This should be inside, and it should actually be up here. This one is the right way around, but it's in the wrong place. It should be up there. These fairing brackets are upside down. That one's upside down as well. This whole underside has got a section of rubber mat, and nothing is bolted down. And I'm guessing this is an inline fuse, probably for the Oxford heated grips. So all this stuff's going to have to come out. Don't know what that is. No idea. So I'll do a bit of a sleuthing to find out what needs to be removed here, but we'll worry about getting that out once the bike's running. So as you saw in an earlier video, I've already purchased a new tank for this bike. I may take a shot at cleaning it, but I don't know if you can see in here. It's very, very, very rusty. It's bad, really bad. And then there's what I believe to be kind of leakages along the seams. On the other side, you can feel it. It's like a caramel sauce that's coming out of the seams. All right, so as we start the disassembly process for the ZX7, I thought I'd just give a little bit of an overview of the process that I use. If you've watched my videos before, you'll know it. Skip ahead 30 seconds or a minute, and then you can pick up the disassembly process. But for those that have not seen what I do, here it is. So the whole process for me, and this is, each to their own, but this is what I do. It's a very methodical, very pedantic sort of process. And the kind of stuff that I like to have on hand are these Ziploc snack bags and Ziploc sandwich bags for storing fasteners and whatnot in, a notebook, and obviously a pen to write in, and then a bunch of these storage bins down here, and I've got some other ones, some new ones for this job way over there at the back somewhere. Yep, the ones with the yellow lids. So what happens is every time I take a part off the bike, so step one, for instance, might be remove the solo cowl. So in the book, number 1, remove solo cowl. Then I take a snack bag and it gets labeled number 1, solo cowl attaching bolts. They go in the bag, they go into a box in the one of these smaller boxes right here for storage. And every single step I take, no matter how seemingly insignificant, gets recorded in the book, gets labeled in a bag, gets put in a box. It's just, you don't lose anything, you know exactly what order things came apart in. And then, if there's any sort of special and strange things that you have to do to get something off, I write a note in here. If there's some sort of interesting way that something has to go back together and I need a diagram to remind myself, I can make a diagram in the book. The other thing I do is take pictures at every stage of the disassembly. So just on the outside of the bike, even though I've got, another one over there and there's another one over there, I'm still going to follow the same process. I will take pictures. I'll take, 10 pictures of the bike as it sits. I'm going to take, 10 pictures of the bike again once all the body work's off it. And I'm just going to keep taking pictures. And if I think I have enough pictures, I'm going to take some more. And you take stuff from every angle possible, because I guarantee it has never failed to happen to me yet. When I go to put some sort of cables or routings or hoses or something somewhere, and I can't quite remember, I go back to my pictures and I go, I've got 2 good angles of that, but the one angle I really need, I didn't take the picture. So take lots of pictures, from every angle you can think of that you might require, and then take a few more just because. So that's the process that I use. Yes, it's slow. Yes, it's methodical. Yes, it's pedantic. But, I'd rather go through that process and know that the bike is going to go back together the way that it should, than, miss something along the way or not remember how to think. So here's what happens, right? I showed you earlier, when you take something apart and you think you know how it goes back together, right? Somebody's taken this apart thinking they know how it goes back together. They've got the bracket on wrong. They couldn't figure out why this elastic band strap wouldn't stay on, so they've had to zip tie it. So, these are the kinds of things that you can prevent, especially if you haven't got another bike like I have to reference, clearly. How can you ever think that is the right way for that to go on? It doesn't look right, it doesn't fit right. So, some things are always going to be obvious, but, other things, not so much. If something looks wrong, then you can, do a bit of research, make a note in the book. The other thing that's handy to doing this in a very pedantic manner is, as I take things apart, I'm going to find things that are screwed up, broken, in need of repair, missing, whatever. There's going to be another page in the book right? So probably this page, right off the bat, I'll start numbering things back here, but this becomes things to buy, new parts that I require. I'll get all listed in here. There'll be another page in here of things to repair. They'll get all listed in on a separate page. So as I discover things, as I uncover problems, you know, record it all. Then you don't miss stuff. You don't forget stuff. It's just, that's the way I do it. You know, I've actually bought bikes. Unfortunately, they were just part bikes because, you know, this is part of the problem. Is I bought two VF 1000Rs that somebody had taken apart, and every single bolt was loose in a box like that. It was just full of bolts and washers and screws and nuts and whatnot. I mean, yeah, there's some of them you could figure out where they go, but nothing was bagged, tagged, labeled. If you go that route, the chances of that thing going back together properly with the right bolts and whatnot in the right places are, you know, in my opinion, the chances of that are slim to none, unless you've done, you know, 10 of the same bike and you can put it together in your sleep. But I'm not that guy. I could do 10 of the same bike and I'm still not going to remember how it goes back together. So, all right, let's start taking this thing apart. All right, so far there's nothing unusual under here really. It's just dirty and dusty. So yeah, so far so good. Nothing overly alarming at this point. So I think we'll take the air box off, and then we'll start the process of seeing if we can get it to turn over. I don't want to try to get it to turn over until I know what's inside that air box. Make sure there's nothing in the carburetors, and then we've also got fairly easy access to the spark plugs, and we can get some compression testing done. All right, so that should give us enough access to everything we need for the moment. As far as atrocities go, so far the biggest concern is that somebody has put an SAE Imperial bolt through there on the frame mount for the lower fairing. So that's going to have to be either retapped or helicoiled, because some sort of coarse thread Allen bolt that's not metric. It's like, you know, this is the kind of stuff that just, you have to expect it. You're always going to find it on an old bike. But I don't think I've taken that one OEM fastener out of this bike. So crazy, but you know, that's just the way that it goes. It's just, you have to expect it. And it's nice, the coolant bottle is in really nice shape, because those things are getting hard to find. And when you can get the reproduction ones, are like $300 Canadian on eBay. They're just crazy money. So the basics of getting the airbox off are, you just remove the 5 rubber plugs, and then you should get access to the bolts that hold the airbox to the carbs. All right, so for giggles, let's just put a boost pack on it. First of all, let's see if we have any life in this thing at all. I'm not getting any dash lights. obviously there's no power anywhere. I'm not getting any power to the starter. There's no gauge cluster lights. So everything is completely dead. So it's time to start checking some fuses, I guess. Well, there's the main fuse. That would be the reason that there's no power. All right, so I'm going to put a new 30 amp fuse in here. I mean, I'm no electrical genius. The electrical troubleshooting is my worst discipline when it comes to this stuff. But you know, obviously, you've got to figure out why these things blow if they blow. So, with an old bike with you know, heated grips and all kinds of other things that might have been done over the years, it could be anything shorting out somewhere. So, I'm going to throw this in, and hopefully, I don't set anything on fire. Okay, new fuse in. Let's see if anything happens here. Power on. Ah, we have dash lights. So we have dash lights. We don't have headlights, and I don't have anything at the starter. There's no clicking. There's no. Oh, there we go. It did click. I got a bad switch in the start in the handlebar here, probably. Oh, look at that. Well, that's a good start. Just a bit of a flaky switch there on the handlebar, which I wasn't surprised at. They tend to be a little goofy on these bikes. The other the other Ninja ZX7 that I have to store still has a kind of a bit of a flaky switch as well. So I'm guessing it's just a weak spot on these things. Well, that's a good start. It turns over. Can't complain about that. Nice. All right, so while we're disassembling, let's take a look at these fairings. From the outside, they actually look pretty darn good. From the inside, they look pretty darn bad. So you can see the repair to that lug. It's almost taken a lot of time to get the outside looking quite good. But it looks like it's just a whole whack of epoxy on the inside. This is quite atrocious here as well. So that's one. The other one is the same. Pretty bad. I do have spares of these fairings. This is the same sort of deal. This has got repairs, front mounting lug missing, and epoxy kind of here and there. I have spares of these too. So yeah, missing mounting lug, fiberglass and epoxy and whatnot. So basically what will happen is I'll be comparing the spares that I have, and we'll pick the best, and we'll repair those. If I do end up using these, obviously, I mean, the insides have to be cleaned up. I don't like having big gobs of epoxy everywhere. I know it may be a little bit stronger, but at the end of the day, it just looks like crap. And I don't like the inside looking like that at all. Front fairing, let's take a look at the inside of here. I haven't really looked at that yet. Yeah, same sort of idea. I mean, it's been repaired in here, and it's certainly stood the test of time. So whoever repaired it, it doesn't look pretty. It can be cleaned up, but it's obviously been reasonably well done from a strength perspective. So I'm not a huge fan of ripping all that stuff apart just to do the same thing all over again, but I will clean it up. The substitute for the inner fender, it's just a piece of rubber. It's been glued and bolted down. It's somebody got rid of the tail, rear tail fender, the rear mudguard. That's gone. However, I did just buy off eBay a genuine rear fender and a very rare 89 hugger. So yes, my stupidity continues, spending money on a bike that I haven't got running yet. So yeah, one way or the other, I guess I'm committed again to this. But yeah, somebody contacted me through the channel. So thank you, Chris, for reaching out. And he's got a bunch of ZX stuff that he sells to restorers and sells a lot of stuff on eBay UK. So he reached out and made a couple of those rare items available to me. So I was appreciative of that. So that was kind of nice. Small things like, you know, this, yeah, I showed you, this is on upside down, the wrong way around. And just to make sure that it fits real good, somebody has beaten it to death with a hammer to get that into the position where it'll actually take you know, a nut and bolt of some sort. So that's going to have to be straightened out and welded and, you know, fixed, generally speaking. So yeah, it's crazy, just crazy. Like, why do people do this stuff? And while I'm here, it reminds me that one of the things I do have to start doing now that I'm starting to get access here is soak these header bolts, because yeah, header bolts can be a bit of a pain in the backside to get off. So I'm going to start putting some good lubricant on those. They certainly seem like they've been torqued down well good. Look how bent that collar is. The carb slides generally feel okay. This one was sticking before, now it's kind of freed up. But yeah, of course the carbs will all need to come off and be completely rebuilt. But I'm trying to decide whether or not, just for giggles, do I just give it a little shot of fuel in there? I don't want to rely on all the gunk and water that might be in here, so I might try to just disconnect one of the fuel lines there to make sure I don't pump any water in, and then just give it a shot of fuel. That'll probably tell me right away if I have a spark or not, and failing that, I got to pull the plug caps off anyway to do a compression test, but I don't know, maybe I'll do it, we'll see. Alright, so here's another atrocity carburetor. That's the stud that holds the airbox onto this particular carb. Yeah, somebody got a little bit caveman on it, probably cross-threaded it, and then it snapped off. So I'm gonna have to be very careful trying to get that out. I was also gonna take the switch gear off here to clean the switch for the starter button, but I don't know if you could tell, those are not standard OEM Japanese Kawasaki issued screws. Well, the bottom one might be, but it's been well butchered. So my worry was, I mean, I couldn't budge that. I mean, it's partly because this thing moves around, but yeah, I couldn't move it. So I think I'm gonna have to be careful about that. I might wait until I can slide this whole assembly off, I'll just leave it for now. And if I can slide this off the handlebar as a unit, it's gonna give me a bit more easy access to deal with that in case I have to drill those out and extract them in another way. So the fairing stay is off, and again, I'm amazed that somebody would actually pay to have something like this chromed at some point. So now that's all going to have to be sandblasted and epoxied in order to be able to accept paint in the future. Crazy. So here's the other thing I don't understand about these lower fairings. There's no holes drilled here for the V-brace. See the little V-brace that sits inside there, and it gets attached through that slot there. There's supposed to be a hole drilled in there. And I thought, well, maybe they've been filled, but you look on the inside, they've never been drilled, never been filled. I don't understand. I'm wondering if, is it possible that the 89 didn't have that V-brace on in the lower section there, or is this potentially an aftermarket item? It's not fiberglass, it's definitely like a polyplastic of some sort. I don't know. All right, we're going for it. We're gonna give her a little shot of fuel here. Just to see if it'll pop off. Power on. Well, that's good. That means we have spark. Right on. Happy days. I know that was a very short run. I didn't want to run it for very long either way. And I didn't hear any bad engine noises, so one more step forward. That's good. Let's see if I can get these carburetors off. The plan now is, now that I got it to fire, I'd like it to actually run for some sort of reasonable period of time. So I'm going to take the carbs off. Just to be clear, this particular part is not going to be a full carb cleaning and rebuild. It's just going to be inspect them, do a very rudimentary cleaning just for the purposes of getting the bike running. Later on in the restoration, I will do a full carburetor rebuild, but I don't have the kit available at the moment to me. Right. So the carbs are loose. So as I'm pulling off fuel lines here, it's pretty obvious there's rusty water coming out of the fuel line, so it's probably not going to be very pretty when I get this opened up. So at this point, I don't know how difficult these Floatball screws are going to be to remove, so I'll again use my GIS screwdriver and a little valve grinding paste on the tip to get me some extra grip. And then we'll give one a try and see if it's going to cooperate. That's one. That's two. Got to exert a lot of pressure on these to get them to I have to stab myself with a screwdriver. That one's not going to go. That one's gone. There we go. But usually when there's water in there, well, it's not great, but it's not atrocious. I mean, it could be a whole lot worse than that, right? Just, that's old fuel, kind of varnish buildup and whatnot. So let's get the rest of them off and see what they look like. Carburetor number 2. Oh, that one is not too bad at all. So I suspect because it was sitting on its side stand, maybe a lot of the fuel and the crap that was left in the fuel lines over time and the fuel pump would have leached down into carburetor number 1, and then as it evaporated off, it left all of that goo there. So that could be what happened, but let's get the other 2 off and see what they look like. Number 3. Yeah, just as good as number 2. So far, it's just number 1 that's a bit gummy around the main jet. All right, so there's number 4, and it looks pretty darn good too. So I guess we'll pull all the jets out. We'll pull the floats and see what we find. I'll just take the floats out for now. There's a little retaining screw here that holds the pin in place. Let's see if we can get the seats out. There's also a retaining screw for the seats. All right, got all the seats are out, the needles are out, floats are out, main jets are out. Let's see if we can get the. We're definitely going to need to pull those pilots because chances of those being clear are very, very small. Yeah, this first one's pretty gummy. You can feel it. The flute holes are clear, but the pilot itself is totally clogged, as you would expect it to be. So just removing the fuel screws and the washers and the O-rings, and it seems that carburetor number 4 had the washer, but there was no O-ring in there. So that will have to be replaced. I have a couple of spares here, so until the kit arrives, that will suffice. That's why I never throw anything away when I rebuild a set of carburetors. You put all new O-rings in, but I still keep the old ones around for cases like this where you find yourself missing something, and well, in a pinch, an old one will work better than not having one at all. Okay, so I'll give you a look there in the float bowls. This is number 1, which is the worst. It's kind of, see that it's kind of crusty. The others are not too bad at all. The other thing I'll say, even though this is going to be a very basic, rudimentary cleaning to start with, I am taking the top caps off. I am taking the slides and whatnot out of there because, aside from just wanting to clean it a little bit, what you don't want to do is you don't want to be squirting carburetor cleaner into a set of carbs that have the rubber diaphragms in the top. Because if you get the carb cleaner on the rubber diaphragms, some of the carb cleaners can dissolve that stuff and turn it into basically black goo, and you ruin your carburetor diaphragm. So top tip there, make sure you remove all of that stuff before you start firing carb cleaner at it. Alright, so just taking the top caps off. The needle in number 1 is a little gummy, just like the rest of that carburetor, but yeah, number 2 a little bit as well, but nothing unusual so far. So the other thing I did was I took out all the choke plungers and cleaned them up a bit. 2 of them are sticking really badly, so now this bar was sticking as well, so now everything kind of snaps back nicely. Yeah, shot carb cleaner through all the various orifices. It goes in one place and it comes out in all the right spots. All of them are about the same. So last thing to do here is clean the jets, which I'm going to do tomorrow. They're just going to kind of soak in there overnight. That's carb cleaner. So we'll let those soak, and then I'll get my carb cleaning tool out and run the right size cleaning wire through those. And then I cleaned this fuel line out because it was full of rust. You can kind of see it spattered all there, but I'm gonna run some hot water through that as well, just to make sure it's clear. There's no point in pumping crap into the carburetors that obviously came out of the fuel pump, which chances are that's going to need to be replaced, but we'll get to that in due course. Okay, so just a quick summary of next steps here. Carbs will go back together, get them back on the bike. Then I'm going to change the oil. Yes, the engine and everything is going to have to come out of here anyway, but since I want to try to run this for a little while, I don't want to run it with 10-year-old black as molasses oil in there, so I'm not going to bother changing the filter at this point. I'll do that later, but I will change the oil, and then we'll run the bike. Hopefully, see if we can get it to run and stay running. And I'd like to put put it through a heat cycle. And then once I've done that, we'll do, obviously while that's happening, we'll do some basic assessment. Is there any smoke, any strange noises and all that kind of stuff. Hopefully neither of those two things happen. And then once it's run for a while and heat cycled, then I'm going to do compression test on it. And the reason I'm going to do the compression test after is, if it starts and it runs okay, well, then there must be semi-decent compression. You know, plus if it's been sitting for as long as I think it has, there's a good chance that there might be some sticky piston rings potentially there. So, you know, heat cycling this and running it for a while may help that. So might as well get all that sort of stuff done and out of the way before I do the compression test. So that's the plan. Yeah, and the other thing I will say is if you take carbs off your bike, plug the inlets with some rags, or if you've got little bungs or stoppers or whatever, put them in there. You just, yeah, you don't want to be accidentally dropping stuff in there, whether it's dirt or bike parts or tools or whatever else. That wouldn't be good. So yeah, always plug that stuff up. So one of the risks that you face when you do kind of a, you know, quick and dirty job like this, just to kind of take things apart, get them generally clean enough for the bike to run, is that a lot of times these Floatball gaskets are old, right? And there's a very good chance that when they're old and compressed, they will leak when you put them back together. And I don't have the new kit on hand, so what I tend to want to do in these kinds of cases, I have my rubber softening solution, which is wintergreen oil and alcohol. So 1 part oil of wintergreen and 3 parts isopropyl rubbing alcohol. And that stuff generally will soften up you know, any kind of rubber. It works really well on manifolds like this. Like these things get too hard, you can take them off and you know, leave them in there for a couple of days in that solution, and they'll be like soft as new, and they don't go hard again after. And they don't swell, they don't change shape, nothing like that. I have found with smaller kind of rubber parts like these sorts of gaskets, in addition to them getting significantly softer, they will swell ever so slightly, which in the case of, you know, wanting to kind of rejuvenate to get a better seal isn't always a bad thing. So you just got to make sure you don't leave them in too long in this case, because they don't take, you know, more than an hour. I tend to check them after 30 minutes, and then if they need another half hour, I'll put them in again. But it's the best chance I have of these things not leaking, because I'm not a fan of putting gasket sealant and silicone and all that kind of crap on Floatball gaskets. So this is what I tend to try. It doesn't always work, but it gives me a better shot at things not leaking. All right, here's another top tip. When you put the top caps back on, obviously you've got to be very careful that the diaphragm seats properly in the groove when you put the cap back on. So if you flick these and you find that one of them is like really easy to slide up, or it doesn't come back the same way, then chances are you might not have seated the diaphragm properly in its groove, so you've got like an air leak. The resistance when you do this should be almost identical on all of them. Ideally it should be identical. So if you got one that goes up way too easy, the diaphragm's not seated. I had one of them that was not seated properly. I was just kind of testing it, and it was going way too easily up into the top there. So, and sure enough, the diaphragm wasn't properly seated. So you know, watch out for that. All right, so the carbs are back together. I will say 20 minutes for these Floatball gaskets would have been perfect. I put them in for 30, and they were very difficult to get in. They had swelled up to the point where they were slightly too long, but I got them in, and hopefully they're going to seal up. But yeah, if you're going to try that in that solution, the wintergreen oil and alcohol, I would say 20 minutes max. So I think what I'm going to do is bench test these for leaks before I put them back on the bike. There's no point in having a fuel leak when they're back on the bike. And we'll see if we get any sort of leakage. And it's been a few minutes. So far so good. So I'm going to leave that for you know, a few hours just to make sure that there's nothing kind of slow leaking there. But by and large, it'll probably be fine for the purposes of running the test on the bike. And I think that's going to wrap it up for this video. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. And in the next video, we're going to put it on some fuel on the fuel bottle and see if we can get it to run for a reasonable length of time. We'll give it an oil change before we do that. and we'll see how it goes. So come back for that, and we'll see you next time.